Florida International will be a different university in order that it may be a better university.
Florida International University, Miami's public research university, and let me welcome you all to our space in Washington, D.C. My name is Gavin McCabe, and I work as this office's Research Showcase, Visitor Experience, and Government Communications Fellow, and also brewer of some of the best cafecito you'll find in the district. We're all very excited today to bring together a fun dialogue between many of our great partners for an eclectic and electric showcase of our hometown, Greater Miami, and the beaches. But we'd also like to shine some light on long-term collaboration between FIU, our local governments, and the very important hospitality, food, and beverage sectors, and even our work as the state's University of Distinction in Environmental Resilience. And through it all, hopefully extract an understanding of the economic activity of some of the region's most important festivals. Today, you'll hear about the economic impact of the Art Basel Main Festival, which has brought in from $400 million to $500 million. And of course, the South Beach Wine and Food Festival, which had a $31 million direct and indirect impact to our region. We should also note that this week has been a very busy week for FIU and DC. Some of you may know, this summer, the Department of Commerce and the EDA funded 12 tech hubs around the United States to innovate and bring people together, universities, industry, government, to advance emerging technologies and increase national security. And South Florida was selected as one. And this Monday, we had a national workshop in this very space with over 40 leaders from industries, universities, government agencies and departments, focusing on accelerating the commercialization of these technologies. And also from Monday through Wednesday, we had a group of students on a fly-in seminar up here. And they also took part in that, and they left yesterday, but we were so glad to have them. And of course, tomorrow, for those that may be interested in returning, the long-awaited release of the findings from the National Latino Poll will be happening here at 9 a.m., so early in the morning, but we're very excited, a few days until the election. As I mentioned, my title does list Research Showcase, so after this, I'd like to invite you all to explore our space. Our research cubbies out in the lobby show many of FIU's federal priorities, and feel free to play around with our interactive wall as it were. But what we're all here for in the end is to support our student success and harness our convening power as we're doing this afternoon as we broadcast live online. And now I'd like to take a brief moment to introduce Carlos Becerra, Associate Vice President of FIU, and the overseer of this office. So,
Gavin.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for those watching today. I think we're going to have a nice opportunity to kind of showcase a lot more of the fun and hospitality sector of what our hometown is all about. Since we are expecting some other guests from our trustees from the Florida House, I think we'll give some further introductions later. But I do want to, yes, we like to say that we bring the magic of Miami to nation's capital, but as I think you'll see today, we're going to reposition our GPS more so probably to the city of Miami Beach, which is really the focus of a lot of these global festivals that we host. So why don't I ask my panelists to join me before I introduce them. Up front, Isabella. I'll properly introduce them momentarily. And in the audience, special shout out, Donna Delgado with the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau. She's just reciting some interesting stats that I'll call on her a little bit later. We have Manny Orozco from Miami-Dade County. Yes, FIU is proud to have a presence in the nation's capital, but so does our regional county government. Strong partners in much of what we do. And very excited to have Dean George Valdez of the Wortham College of Nursing. The dean is being inducted this weekend, this Saturday, I believe, as a fellow for the American Association of Academy of Nursing. There you go. So a proud honor. We'll probably hear about a little bit about that later. But let me introduce my panelists. Dean Michael Cheng of the Chaplin School of Hospitality Management. Get a load of this, some of his specialties: competency-based learning, food product development, restaurant development, sensory analysis. Glad you're sitting next to me. And we'll have to hear about this: culinology, which is trademarked.
It is.
Okay. Michelle Berger with LSN Partners, a partner at LSN Partners. Strategic planning, policy development, and nonprofit management, has served under 2 Miami Beach mayors, and was also instrumental in a very important aspect of that work in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, and helped create the precursor to the Climate 365 conference that we'll hear a little bit about this afternoon. Mel McGuire, great friend of FIU, also a trustee of the Florida House. I'm proud to be a trustee myself, and we have some other fellow trustees in the audience as well. Attorney by training, served previously as a former secretary of the Florida Department of Commerce, has covered all her bases, graduated from FSU's College of Law, earned a BA from the University of Florida, and was proud to be an associate dean at FIU at one point. And at some point, Mel played an instrumental role in even our visioning what we would do in Washington, D.C. So I'm glad to have her back, and her husband as well will meet. Isabella Perez is a proud member of our Bartenders Guild at the Chaplin School of Hospitality Management, and as you'll hear, plays a very important role in our the execution of the South Beach Wine and Food Festival. So why don't we kick it off with Dean Cheng. Tell us a little bit about this amazing festival that you helped produce and our students helped produce, the history of it, and maybe touch on a little bit on the economic impact as well.
Sure. Thank you, Carlos. Good afternoon. Oh, wait, here. Sorry, forgot about that. So good afternoon. The South Beach Wine and Food Festival started on our campus at FIU's Biscayne Bay, and on our patio, actually, at the Chaplin School of Hospitality and Tourism Management. It initially began as a one-day festival, wine and food tasting, and in 1997, we called it the Florida Extravaganza at that point. And it was started by our late Professor Chip Cassidy, who was a wine professor, with the support of Southern Wine and Spirits. We had a single row tables and about 50 to 70 guests, with about 20 students working the festival. And we did that for about 5 years before we had a disruptor, Lee Schrager, who is the Chief Communications Officer of Southern Glazers. And he said, man, if you guys want to make this big, you need to take it down to South Beach. So we're like, sure, let's do it. And who knows, but on our first year at South Beach, which was 2002 at that time, we had the Grand Tasting Village, and it was about 2 blocks long, and we served 7,000 guests. You know, we went from like 50 to 70 guests to 7,000 guests just by relocating it. Today, it's in its 24th year. It's expanded greatly and has become a 4-day wine and food festival serving 60,000 guests and staffed by 1,500 student volunteers. And to date, the festival has raised over $40 million in scholarship support for its sole beneficiary, which is the Chaplin School of Hospitality and Tourism Management.
Did you say 40 million?
40 million.
That's quite an impact. Wow.
Over 24 years. So let's talk about some of the highlights from this year's festival, which really shows the incredible impact that this festival has on our community and the economy. First, the festival generated a total economic impact of $31.2 million this year. And that's huge, you know, which includes about 17 million in direct sales and more than 13 million in indirect effects like spending in local businesses. The festival also supported 6,200 jobs across different sectors, from hospitality to food services to retail, as well as transportation. And speaking of spending, food and beverage alone took a big slice. So that one had the visitors dropping around $2.7 million in that category alone. Lodging and recreation also saw a major boost, you know, benefiting from the influx of attendees who are booking hotel rooms and enjoying Miami's vibrant scene. Another interesting statistic, the festival filled around 18,000 room nights, which gives a very nice lift to our local hotels in Miami, especially around the Miami Beach downtown in the Brickell area. And when it comes to taxes, The festival generated close to $1 million in local taxes, which is a big win for our city and our services. And on top of that, when we asked the attendees if they knew who the festival benefited, 59% of attendees know that the festival benefits the Chaplin School of Hospitality and Tourism Management. So I mean, we're very fortunate to have the festival with us, but it's because of folks like you who support us and all our guests who travel in from out of town. So it's been incredibly helpful for us.
And I believe we have a quick video
Yes.
we're going to show. Put Gavin back in business.
The best weather, the best food, the best drinks, amazing chefs, amazing vibes, the music, nothing can be better than this.
Welcome. Thank you so much for coming.
If you love to try a new cocktail or two, this is your place. And it's outside in February in our fantastic, beautiful South Florida weather. What could be better?
This is such an important festival for everybody in the industry. We get to let loose, we get to be our truest selves while celebrating wine and food.
The South Beach Wine Food Festival started on campus, actually, back in 1997. As a one-day event, wine and food tasting. We call it the Florida Extravaganza.
We're so blessed to have this event every year in Miami.
Everything's a moment that matters at the festival, whether it's the Burger Bash or whether it's the tribute dinner or the drag brunch or the taco event. I mean, they're all moments that matter, and I think that's what we're all about, making moments that matter.
Yes, it's really fun to come out and have this experience, but it's also great to know that you're contributing to such a good cause. So many students benefit from this festival through FIU.
Give them opportunities to work in different areas of food service, and you can get that here at the South Beach Food and Wine Festival.
To work along some of the greatest winemakers and distillers and chefs and bartenders and restaurant managers in the world is, you know, an experience you can't buy anywhere, no matter what school you go to.
Michelle Berger, you've had an interesting perch over the last 5+ years. A lot of these festivals we're talking about are obviously based on the beautiful beaches of the city of Miami Beach. I'm curious if you can go back to your city days, from the complexity of these amazing undertakings, that typical calendar on and the schedule and the tempo on the city of Miami Beach. What do you remember of those mega events from your city days?
You know, it's incredible to think about it, but there's only 90,000 residents who live on Miami Beach. It's a small barrier island, 7 miles long and 1 mile wide. But we really do receive more than 20 million visitors a year. And those people who are coming to Miami Beach are not necessarily traveling over the causeway anymore just for the ocean. And I think from a branding perspective, one of the best things that the city of Miami Beach did was to partner with entities like FIU. When Lee came to the city, for instance, and was interested in taking the existing event that was a great event at the university, it became a very important event that now really is the most important event in the month of February. We're fortunate enough right now because around the same time, I think that was probably 24 years ago, maybe, or probably 22 years ago, Art Basel actually signed a contract with the city of Miami Beach. It took about 5 years for the Basel team from Switzerland to choose Miami Beach because they were looking at 5 other communities around the country. Fortunately, we said to them, well, February's taken, right? And so December was a great time of year because I think you mentioned it before, and it was mentioned also by Lee in the video, that everyone wants to be outside in Miami Beach, especially when you don't necessarily have great weather in other parts of the country. So that's happening in December. We just started. It will soon be the 4th annual climate event that's happening in March. And then obviously we have spring break in April. And there are about 150,000 college students historically who have been coming over to the beach for fun. But I think that idea isn't the kind of fun that it used to be anymore. So the calendar slows down during the summertime. But honestly, the Miami Beach Convention Center that recently went through a $640 million renovation, now you can't even find dates during the year when the convention center is available for a long stretch of time. And so I think from a tourism perspective and even from an economic perspective, it has significantly changed the brand.
Yeah. And what's the vision of this future iteration of Climate 365 and the conference you're going to help put on?
So it's interesting. During the pandemic, all infrastructure projects were put on pause around the world. Because we obviously had something pretty catastrophic happening to all of us. And, but clearly the issues, the challenges related to climate were not stopping. And I was chief of staff to the mayor of Miami Beach, Dan Gelber, at the time, and we were looking for some kind of Kickstarter, knowing that we were coming out of the pandemic. We were speaking with members of Congress, knowing that Congress and the White House was going to be presenting an infrastructure piece of legislation with eventually what became $1.3 trillion worth of funding. And so we were really looking for some kind of event, Kickstarter, to have a conversation about climate and infrastructure needs, not only in Miami Beach, but also just around the globe. And so we, in 2022, actually, and we ended up asking the Aspen Institute to come on and join us as a content provider. And we ended up having our first conference, a global conference. About 1,200 people attended from around the globe. We probably had representation from about 42 different countries. Over the last 3 years, we've had 600 speakers. And 6,000 attendees. But what's been great about it is the speakers have been the Secretary of the Department of Energy, the Secretary of the Department of Transportation, the Vice President of the United States, at the same time, Bill Nye, the science guy, Gloria Estefan. And we've had about 7 governors, including Governor Walz. And we've had probably about 4 dozen members of Congress and about 400 or so mayors. And what's been important about it is that the thinkers and the doers in the climate conversation in particular have been put in a room to talk about the solutions, not whether or not we have a climate problem, but to specifically focus on the solutions. And over the last 3.5 years, we've seen over $150 million be allocated in Miami-Dade County alone by the federal government for infrastructure improvement. So when you bring together the chief scientist of NOAA with the policy advisors from the federal agencies and the state policymakers and the elected officials to get something done, it helps Miami, not only from a tourism and economic perspective, but it also helps forecasting future investments.
There you go. And we can't, well, I think we just landed a side deal over there. You heard Gavin mention that earlier in the week we actually convened in this room about 9 universities that are all tied to a lot of these Department of Commerce tech hubs. These are tech hubs that are all related to the environment or climate or energy, and I think we cooked up a little concept to maybe reconvene that group at Climate 365, which would be another example of your local partners being able to use such a platform. So I salute you and thank you for being our partner. Mel McGuire, a fellow trustee, along with me, and I see we've been joined by Rick Derrer, the chair of our Florida House Trustees. We'll introduce him a little later. I'd love to hear from him. But you've also had an interesting, various different vantage points across the years. Curious how someone that used to lead commerce and for the previous governor in the state of Florida, but obviously previous. How do you see this amazing movement of these global festivals in your hometown?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Well, thank you for having me. And I hadn't met the dean, but I knew about you. So I love that school, and it's just great. And we haven't seen each other for a long time, but I'm very happy to be here. And I'm going to brag on my husband, who's a great architect. Raise your hand. This is Jose Halliburton Navia, and his firm were part of the architects that did designed the campus for FIU, and has done multiple buildings. So they're pretty much involved too. And very proud to be a trustee of the Florida House and our relationship with FIU. But I want to step back a little bit. I brought my statistics about your conference, and they check out exactly what you said. But I want to step back. If you look at the history of Florida and economic development, we were number 3 in agriculture, which is hard to believe. We were behind California and Texas. And the agriculture was primarily in cattle and some crops that now have moved more south because of climate change. But we were big gladiola, we were big orange juice, we were big tomato. A lot of that has moved to South America. We're still number 3, but as everyone knows, that tourism is one of the driving factors of our economy. And to put that in perspective, just in the last I was looking up the numbers before I came. The tourism industry, which is events, hotels, beverage, festivals, all of that, creates 140 million visitors a year in Florida. And that amounts to about $125 billion. Then you have to extrapolate the tax revenue to it. So when you talk about these 2 festivals that we're focused on this afternoon, they're a significant part of it. And on any given year in the arts and culture alone, not just tourism, there's 100,000 jobs in Florida that are full-time. That does not include all the part-time help that is hired for all these festivals. So we have a lot of people that come in, and we have a lot of people that make a lot of money from our work. But traditionally, Florida, in addition to the agriculture, they started becoming biomedical. So we fast forward to now. We have clean technology. It's always been in the economic development plan at the state. We would never have heavy manufacturing. Part of that is because our infrastructure, what do you call the water that comes underneath? The water's too. Water table. That's water table. The water table is too high for us to ever deal with heavy manufacturing. So we always had light manufacturing. So it was a big shift about 25 years ago into clean tech, which we know what's happening. But the other thing a lot of people don't know about is that we have defense and homeland security, huge amount of it. We have 20 major military installations and 3 united commands. So those jobs and the work around it is a pretty strong economic impact in Florida, and people don't know that. But what comes out of it? And you can go over to FIU and look at their different schools that are involved, engineering, the biosciences, all of these type of students that come out will get jobs with the infrastructure of supporting our defense and homeland security, which is major in the state of Florida. Again, back to clean tech and information tech, we're bioplastics and transportation, huge in the country, and we're very strong in financial and professional services. FIU supports all of that. But when we look at the tourism industry, it's still the strongest driver. And I do want to go back to what you said about Art Basel and then about the South Beach and wine. If we look at what it's doing, it generates, just South Beach Wine and Food Festival, $1 million in local taxes are generated. And there's a multiplier of that into our community that's just really strong. I mean, we are a state that has a very robust economy no matter what else is happening in the United States, and it's driven a lot by the tourism, the hospitality industry, and what you're doing in climate change is really going to be the leadership in the country for what we do in other areas. It's happening here first, and what you're doing will go into the other parts. I want to stop, and I'm going to comment later. But I want to come back when we talk about Florida House and our chairman. I want to talk about Moon Over Miami. Okay.
The next global festival.
Yeah.
Well, last but definitely not least, as I mentioned to someone the other day, sometimes we definitely always bring our students along for the ride. but FIU rolls in a different way. Many times we hand over the keys and let them drive the car. Isabella Perez, why don't you tell us a little bit about your own experience with the festival and how, and not only through your eyes, but how all of our students are engaged in helping execute this amazing event.
Yeah, so hi, my name is Isabella. I've been a student now for since 2021, so I'm a senior working on both my bachelor's and my master's. I was a volunteer at the festival for the very first time in 2022. You get different opportunities to either just be a volunteer, you can be a lead, which takes on a little bit more responsibility. There's also jobs within the actual SOBI office where you get to help recruit students, so be coordinators. We have so many positions that are available for students to go ahead and be a bigger part of the festival. As a volunteer, I was kind of able to help on a lower side, and then I became a lead the year after, which meant that I actually got to be in charge of a group of volunteers. So I had 13 students that were kind of under me, and I had to be able to make sure that all the tasks got done within GTV, which was a very different experience just because I had never worked for a festival before. I didn't think that was the area I wanted to go into. But it was very interesting, got to work with a lot of big name companies and a lot of big name food brands. A lot of them are here to offer students jobs at the end of the day, and they see the hard work that's put in and they are very appreciative of all the work that's done. So it was a great time to do that. And then this past year was my most recent year working with the festival. I got a lot more responsibility with that. I'm also, like Carlos mentioned, I'm one of the students in our Bartenders Guild. So we have a partnership with Bacardi down at the hospitality school. And through that, we have the Bacardi Center of Excellence, and we have 2 student organizations under that. We have the Coffee and the Bartenders Guild. I'm the current president of our Bartenders Guild. And going with that, we have the Chaplin School actually has one of the tents that we work with. It's our alumni tent. We went ahead and we created the cocktails for that tent. So students, including myself, are the ones that develop the cocktails. We are in charge of putting together order lists. We're in charge of doing inventory, making sure all the batches get done. We're in charge of recruiting students, making sure that everybody has a schedule and everybody, can make it there. Giving them tasks day in, making sure we pack the truck. All of those fall under student task lists. And I was in charge of coordinating all that, which was a very big task that I got on. I didn't expect that to happen, but it was, I think I worked on the festival for at least 3 months prior to actually being there. So one of my favorite things was actually seeing it come to life. I think that helped me go a little bit more into the event side and maybe see that this might be an area in spirits that I want to go into. On the student side, we also got to go ahead and we have in North venue. So one of our other venues, we have the Bacardi Block Party that was on Sunday. And we also had to go ahead and create another 3 cocktails for that. So we did a total of 10 cocktails for that whole event and had to make sure that, again, same thing, coordinate, making sure the students got to the next place, making sure that students were available to network and also had the abilities to be able to be successful. So that included practicing weeks before, making sure that all the students knew what they were coming into, knew what the cocktails were, knew what was in it. Very big experience, and it was a great opportunity within the Bartenders Guild in my current role.
Cool. Now you're part of the School of Hospitality and Management, but
yes,
the student person power for this festival spans all. How many students overall are involved in the effort?
The numbers of the students involved, I know it's
50.
How many?
1,500.
1,500.
But that's just total bodies. There's almost 5,000 shifts. So a lot of them do multiple shifts.
There you go.
It's from the whole weekend. So we usually work there's some people that work starting of the week, some that just work Wednesday to Sunday. Most of our shifts were Thursday to Sunday up until 1, 2 a.m., early as 6:30, 7. So it's a lot of moving parts, but they all work together very well to create such a great festival.
Very good. And I know that certain individuals in the audience are in the hospitality sector and tourism. What are your own plans? What's in your future?
So I started off with wanting to go into restaurants. I almost went to culinary school before I came to FIU. And I wanted to go into restaurant management. Through these pods and through these fly-ins that we get to do, I learned that maybe it wasn't for me, and through classes and kind of being able to talk to individuals in the industry. And I went into the hotels and cruises route. I was kind of looking there, and I think FIU does a really great job at helping you find a way to do that, because you don't have to just stick to one sector and then that's it, you're stuck for 4 years. So they do a really great job at being able to help you find your way and help you change your mind if that's what it is. And now, through the Bacardi Center of Excellence, I found that spirits is the way that I want to go with my life. So I really like the teaching and training side, which I've gotten to do a lot through being able to help at the festival, through being the president, through being able to work with a lot of brand ambassadors. So I would hopefully like to work for a brand like Bacardi. If it's not Bacardi, it's okay. But hopefully work with a brand, specifically, hopefully be a brand ambassador in the future and get to continue that teaching and training side, but through the spirits industry.
Let me quickly explain what pod is. So here at the Chaplin School, about 4 or 5 years ago, we created a course and we call it Programming on Demand. So it's a pod. It's a 1 credit experiential class that we swap out the content every time we offer it. So we highly focus on the experience for the student. That's why Isabella is saying that's how you learn what you like or you don't like, right? So like this weekend, no, she's going to talk about that next. But we intentionally create these opportunities so students can see behind the house, so they're not thinking this is the area I'm going to go in without knowing much about it.
Isabella, you've participated in a few pods. What do you know of what you're about to experience in Washington, D.C.? And also tell us about some of the previous pods.
So this is, I think, my like 5th or 6th pod.
Wow, you're a pod regular.
Yeah. Well, it's already been 3 years, so it's
frequent flyer.
Yes, with American Airlines. So we went ahead, and this weekend we're here in DC. We're going to visit some brands like Marriott. We're going to go visit the Jose Andres group. We get to actually go behind the scenes and meet with their staff and meet with more of their headquarters and leadership, and kind of get to speak to them, their experiences, what they look for when hiring, which is all very important, because sometimes you don't get that side when you're interviewing. You kind of just go in and see, at least me, I'm scared and I don't know what to talk about or I don't know what to say. And they really help you kind of find your way, and they help show you what they're looking for. They help show you what their side of the industry looks like, more of their day-to-day, and they'll give you the realities of what it is, which has really helped me, like I said, help find my path into what I want to do. We've networked so much on these pods, and we get to actually meet a lot of people that are still willing to help us even when we go back to Miami or we leave the city. Bless you. Some of the pods that we've done in the past was we've been to Aspen, we've been to New Orleans, we've been to, I'm like blanking right now. We've been to New Orleans, Aspen, this is DC. I did Las Vegas, we've done Hawaii. That one I didn't get to go on, but it's okay. And we've gotten to do so many that it's all very different. So you get to see different sides of the industry in different areas. So Las Vegas was very cool to see the nightlife. You see the nightlife side, you see the casino side, while you go ahead and you go to New Orleans, and it's a very different experience. Or even in Miami, we've done cruise pods where you don't actually stay overnight on the cruise, but you go on turnaround day and you get to go and see speak to their leadership, go on the ship, kind of take tours behind the scenes. So it's very different sides of the industry that they take you through, and they all focus on every part. So we try to focus on the beverage, restaurant, hotels, and at least visit one of each while we're there, which really helps every student see a little bit of what they want to see. So a lot of the students they're a mix. Their events, their beverage sector, their restaurant sector, hotel sector. So it gives you a look inside of what each of those could look like. And sometimes students come back switching, and sometimes students come back and they're more motivated than they were before.
There you go. So props to the entire Chaplin School team, but I want to give a special shout out to Sanjay Dewan, our colleague at the Chaplin School that is in essence helping coordinate all these pods. And we thank him because our collaboration, this is the return of the DC pod. This is the first time in a few years, so excited about that. Michelle, we were having a conversation on the side earlier. The festival will take place in March?
March.
Okay. What does this town, this lovely town that we call this town here in DC, what what does it represent for what we could all work together to bring to the festival next year?
Wow. So, I mean, this town represents a lot to a community like Miami. Look, Miami-Dade County is almost 3 million residents. It's the equivalent of 15 other states in this country. And so Miami-Dade County truly is seen as a state to some people in Washington, D.C. From a funding perspective, that actually matters. I think that one of the things that I really want to give a shout out to FIU, because you have been so responsible and have been such a key player in the transformative brand development of Miami-Dade County. And up until really the 80s and even in the 90s, Miami-Dade County was really most known for its beaches. And the environmental ingredients that are there. And the festival, for instance, Art Basel and other events have really added, I think, to this magical sauce that Miami-Dade County has. It's important to have higher ed academic institutions that have a really fair demographic representation of the community that exists, and at the same time demonstrate a willingness to be inclusive of people. And I think that that's a classic example of something that funders and policymakers in DC are looking for. Getting back to the bipartisan infrastructure bill, when the Biden administration and Congress voted, obviously, to pass the $1.3 trillion, they would never have done that if the need wasn't so great. And I think that to date, there have been about 57,000 projects that have been funded in the United States, and that equates to about $600 billion. So we have a very long way to go. But it's critical that Miami have presence here, so that whether we're talking about the policymakers in the Department of Energy or the policymakers at EPA or the Department of Transportation, wherever, Commerce, obviously, and other agencies, that they feel inspired by a community, that they feel that a community has some level of cohesiveness and pride. And I would hope that we're doing a really incredible job of investing in brilliant students like you, who are not only going to excel academically, but you're going to stay in Miami, or if you go away, you're going to come back really soon, because that ROI is important to us, but I think that ROI is also important to Washington. So, I mean, I think from the Climate Festival's perspective, by putting 1,000 elected officials and policymakers in a room with folks from higher ed academic institutions, scientists, chief resiliency officers, heat officers, people from Hollywood, people who are from any industry together, so that it is a group of very unexpected people in the room who I think are also interested in creating these moments that are magical and matter. But what's important about that from a DC perspective, I think, is that I think DC is looking to partner and to invest in communities that are moving the needle, right? And I think that the festival is a great example of, I tell Lee Schrager this all the time, and I'm sorry we haven't met before, because I would tell you this all the time. I have seen a significant growth over the last 3 decades in our hospitality industry alone, the hotels and the restaurants. And when an event brings chefs and important members of an industry to participate in a festival, those players are actually looking at the community to figure out whether or not they want to really place their tentacles in the community to stay. And the reason why we've received so many incredible chefs and restaurateurs and hoteliers in our community, the FIU and the festival really has to take some credit for it, because this is not a short-term kind of, we had a great economic impact, and that's very, very important. But I think you can see a classic example in 2002 when Art Basel came to Miami. It was really a high-end trade fair, right? Now in 2024, it's a global cultural happening, right? That is worldwide, where 80,000 people come, and now there's 20 other fairs in addition to Art Basel, and that alone has turned into the $400 to $500 million in annual revenue.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that happens as a result of a festival that's equally as important.
Yeah.
I want to add to this that when all of that is happening, if you go back over to FIU, downtown and on campus, FIU now has the #1 small business center in the country. And that started, 10 years ago when Carlos and I were involved with starting it, but in 10 years. Now, who comes? A lot of people come from these festivals that end up in Miami, and they come to our small business center at FIU to have the staff help them start their businesses. So there's just, and a lot of hospitality people come and start different businesses, but all of it just flows out of what happens at these festivals. And the impact to our community is just astronomical. As a result, we end up having, separate from FIU, something called eMerge. What is that? Everyone comes from Latin America to Miami. It's tech. It's all tech. And that was started because of our location, and people knew about Art Basel, and people knew about the Wine and Food Festival. It just all flows out of it. Additional business opportunities that no one knew it was there in South Florida.
Yeah. Only because, as the team here will chuckle, I can't say I tweeted anymore, but I posted on X now, earlier today, the Small Business Development Center, funded by the federal government at FIU. More than 8,000 businesses have been supported in the last 10 years. This is fresh data because we just reported. 480 businesses launched through their support, helping access about $480 million in capital, et cetera. So great investment in the federal government. To Michelle's point, I want to reiterate, FIU is looking forward to be part of the Climate 365 Festival. My question was also connecting to the fact that, and those that are visiting here for the first time or watching, our floating bubbles back here, whether it be resilience, whether it be population health, whether it be STEM education and the future of tech talent. Yes, FIU has doubled down to support our students and get students up here for amazing internships and jobs. But when it comes to representing what Miami is, this town also knows that our region is the perfect region to be addressing a lot of these issues, to be coming up with solutions, to confront sea level rise or the rich demography we have when it comes to studying population health. So we gladly wave the Miami banner up here, but it's yes, with fun and sizzle, but also with substance. And we look forward to continue being part from the climate and environmental side. I did tell her I was going to put her on the spot, but Donna Delgado with the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau was reciting some amazing statistics in the last, as of late, as far as where Miami's at today.
Tuesday we just had our annual meeting for the Greater Miami CPB, which...
You want to come here and use this? Sure.
Well, I kind of dropped out, but okay.
So they can see.
On Tuesday we had our annual meeting, and I just wanted to quote some of the statistics. And probably because of Art Basel and the South Beach Wine and Food Festival, we are #4 in the whole country in terms of occupancy for hotels. And I'm sure it'll go up because that's year to date for 24. So once those Art Basel numbers come in, which, 60, 80,000 people, it's going to be even higher. And then the other statistic is that, hold on, I can barely read it. I'm sorry, we're #6 in occupancy and #4 in average daily rates. So the main two cities that go ahead of us are New York and Oahu. And typically, like last year, we were #3. So I think we'll bump up as Art Basel comes in and, things heat up in Miami. But it's an amazing city, as you all know. I have a great job. I get to call on the associations in the D.C. area and up in the Northeast and try to get them to book their conventions in Miami. So I'm working with the MBCC folks all the time, and we just booked a whole lot of big stuff. Adobe just was there last week, had phenomenal numbers, and now they want to return, so we're doing great. Thanks. Was there another question you wanted to
No,
ask
you
me?
hit my second question perfectly.
Okay.
Why this town is so important to Miami from a sales perspective. Donna's
Yeah.
based up here.
Yeah.
And
And
constantly
we actually get 3,500 RFPs a year, requests for proposals, for the hotels and the convention center, up from 2,200 pre-COVID. And I think the convention center has a lot to do with it. You know, the $640 million renovation, 500,000 in expo space, 87 breakout rooms, and a 60,000 square foot ballroom.
Donna knows the stats. And we're glad that actually the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau is the third leg of the stool of the 305 being represented here between the county, FIU, and Donna being up here. And we're glad to count on that.
Let me add this.
Mel.
When you travel around the world and you say, I'm from Florida, the first thing that comes out of their mouths, oh, Miami. That's all they say. That's what they know. And then Disney World. But most people in other countries say Miami first because they love it. They just love it.
As we do. Dean Cheng, why, in addition to this amazing gathering with great friends, what brought you to town this week and type of meetings? I see some of your colleagues in the audience.
Well,
What are you up to?
Same reason as Donna, because everybody is here.
Yeah.
The hotel companies, Marriott, Hilton, Host, they're all headquartered here. So it's just where you need to be in order to network.
Okay, and tomorrow you're also going to be gathering with some of your alumni, the great network of hospitality alums here working all throughout the sectors. So, IQ Mel McGuire, once again. You wanted to touch on an amazing new endeavor.
Is our chairman still here?
Our chairman is here, Mr. Rick.
Rick Durr is of the Florida House. And how many people here know about Florida House? Okay, good. Well, I'm going to tell you something you need to know if you don't know. Florida is the only state that has an embassy in Washington, D.C. So when you imagine an embassy and you go there, you learn about the country. Now you're going to learn about Florida. We educate, we receive Floridians and friends of Floridians. You can come and have orange juice. We always have some type of educational program going on. It's a place to come and relax and, take your time and meet other people. And we have a house that's 100 years old, older.
Yes. 1891.
1891. And we were very lucky. Rhea Childs purchased this 52 years ago, so you can imagine what kind of asset that is now for us. It's a beautiful building right behind the Supreme Court. But the more important thing about the Florida House, it brings Florida culture here so people can learn about it. So to that point, if you're in Miami, on I think it's November 14th, we have a very special program, an event. It's people come from all over the southern part of Florida. It's Moon Over Miami, and we're out on a little islet on Miami off of Key Biscayne, and it's magical. We all go out there like 4 to 5 o'clock, and we're there as the sun goes down, and you literally look back at the city and you see the moon. And it's to raise money for the Florida House. So I have a response card if you're down there, so you can just sign up, and it'll let you sign up online. So I hope you think about it. We're not a big festival like this, but we hope to be. We're going to be a competition one day.
And Rick is in the audience, and since we've been picking on folks in the audience, Rick, you also have your own thumbprints, if you will, on much of FIU's growth. Care to touch on a little bit about your own history?
Sure. So you'll be very interested to know, since you're a hospitality group, I'm a builder, and I've built 6 or 8 buildings on the campus of FIU, but the first one I built was the Graham Center. And inside the Graham Center was the first brass skeller on a university campus where they sold beer. So I don't think it's there anymore, but you may be interested to know that because it's got an incredible history. But yeah, say again?
Converted to Chili's now.
Chili's, okay, well, did they still sell beer? All right, yes. So it's still there. But FIU, I was born and raised in Miami, so I'm so happy to have been able to contribute to the higher education of students in South Florida. We built on University of Miami campus. We built on all the campuses throughout South Florida. But FIU is a great institution, and we just loved working there. And Florida House is a great institution. Again, how many of you know about Florida House? All right, good. We're working hard to make Florida House a household word throughout the state, because we are, as Mel said, the only state in the union that has an embassy in Washington, D.C. Other states have tried, but the land is so expensive up here that it's probably never going to happen. So we have the distinction of being the one and only, and probably will be forever. So thank you, Carlos. I appreciate the opportunity.
Glad to have you here, Rick. We'll open up for questions from the audience. And I did want to point out, between Jose designing many of our buildings on campus and Rick building, I mean, great to have this. Carl, you got a question?
Yes. So I've been a fan of Art Basel, Ultra Winter Music Festival, and other shows and events in Miami and Miami Beach. And one of the things that comes to mind is, how do we preserve the artistic, cultural heritage of Miami Beach at the same time welcoming so many people that are coming to discover Miami and yeah. So my question is about preservation for those who didn't.
Thoughts from the panel?
Thank you for the question, because I think it is a really big challenge. I work with elected officials all over the country and even abroad, and I think there is a real shift within the elected official world, in the sense that many officials did not grow up participating in the arts, whether it's the performing or the visual arts. They did not necessarily go to the theater. They weren't necessarily involved with a ballet or play a musical instrument. And because of gift laws, they're very apprehensive to even accept tickets to a festival, to go to the theater. And when it comes time to fund the arts, we start to see a real shift, where, classic example here in DC, Congress kind of put a pause on the funding of the NEA until after the election. It was actually discussed. We can agree that we've got to fund just $250 million in the arts, which is pretty tiny, but we're going to wait till after the election. Miami-Dade County went through a similar situation where they decided they weren't going to invest more in the arts. I am convinced that Governor DeSantis vetoed, I believe, $600 million in the arts from this past legislative session. Major hit. You can't, a festival is a really important example of how it starts to change the brand and the culture of a community, and how we as residents see ourselves and how people see us. And it is we have 63,000 hotel rooms. I think that's fair. I think it's close to 63,000 hotels in Miami-Dade County to accommodate the visitors, right? We've invested in a performing arts center and and the museums, so that people will use those as landmark venues to visit. We've seen over 1,000 art entities, organizations grown since Art Basel came here in 2002. But that organizations can't sustain themselves at all, right? And so if we know elected officials don't necessarily have a passion and a real relationship to the arts, and if we know that academics are not necessarily being considered as subject matter experts to advise elected officials on what to do, we potentially are heading to a bad place where those hotel rooms might be vacant. We can't afford to turn our backs on the arts. I talk about it a lot. I was at the Perez Art Museum's Board of Trustees retreat last week talking about it. I think that we have to do a better job of advocating for the arts, but I think that we also could take advantage of relationships we have with people, because this is a nationwide problem. And the arts truly have made Miami-Dade County who Miami-Dade County is today. It's not that what was the bikini, the copper tone ad of, of several decades ago. That's really
See it like a native.
right. See it like a native. That's not how Miami is known today. Miami has really become a more sophisticated destination with very smart higher ed academic institutions and business leaders and great food. Great bartenders. But if we don't continue to invest, we will see a cyclical drop.
I will note that federal gift regulations are a little distinct from state and local.
True.
And thanks to collaboration with this gentleman next to me. Last year, had great fun bringing down about 30 or so agency officials and a lot of our congressional DC staff to visit our great wall of wind, take a great tour of Biscayne Bay, visit our concrete lab, and oops, they happened to end up on Industry Day at the South Beach Wine and Food Festival. Thank you, sir. We had another question?
I think he planned it.
Jose?
No, I just want to, it's a question and a comment. I've mentioned it to several people here and I was not going to say it because maybe this was not the appropriate venue to dump on our elected officials. But there is, in Miami Beach, I think Miami Beach, besides the funding for the arts, is at a crucial point in terms of supporting tourism, in terms of hotels. The current city commission, it's on a warpath to not have more hotels in Miami Beach. And this is due to, some confusing messages and again, it's a separate discussion altogether, but it's a very great concern that we might be killing the goose with the golden eggs. Tourism is what drives Miami Beach, and even though there's a lot of hotel rooms, as we were discussing earlier, if they're getting those rates, it means that they're not empty. So I think it behooves all of us to be concerned that somehow this pattern is reversed or redirected.
Carlos, I just want to add, the Super Bowl has come to Miami-Dade County 11 times, more than any other community in the United States. And it's because of our ingredients, right? The airport, the hotels, the restaurants, everything, the weather, right? We have to not only embrace this, but we've got to figure out how to sustain it. And I think that it's oftentimes when we talk about festivals and the economic ROI, we also forget the long-term impact that it plays in the decision-making of smart policies. And I really hope that you will not only continue to thrive with all of the work that FIU is doing, but you'll try to think of some new innovative opportunities, how to engage policymakers and elected officials to understand the bigger picture on what it means. Because to your point, we're struggling. I don't think the city of Miami Beach ended up passing a $159 million general obligation bond 3 years ago just for the arts in Miami Beach. And if Mayor Levine Cava is successful in moving forward with the general obligation bond that she brought up at her State of the County address recently, I guess in the beginning of the year, which might be more than $2 billion, we've got to figure out what pieces of that puzzle are important to Miami-Dade County in order for it to be sustained long term. So it's we have a lot of work ahead of us.
I could throw something in there.
Donna?
Because I'm constantly bidding on citywide conventions for Miami. And
Probably in the last 2 years, we've lost about 1 million room nights because we don't have the hotel package. Like we're just getting small blocks from a lot of hotels, but we need more hotels to sustain all the groups that really, really want to come to Miami. I mean, I just lost American Society of Astro. It's called Radiology something or other. We've lost National Apartment Association. We've lost, like, I'm constantly losing business. It's tough because everybody wants to be in Miami, and when you can't prove that you've got, even though you have 10,000 hotel rooms on the beach side, you can only assemble maybe 5,000 or 6,000. We're just, losing business because of the hotel rooms.
And how many rooms are on deck for our audience to be more aware of that are planned?
Okay, well, finally, the commissioners passed the $70 million loan today or yesterday for the new Grand Hyatt, 800-room Grand Hyatt, which is supposed to be connected to the convention center. But they've been talking about that hotel for what my understanding is for 10 years. So I got recruited on the fact that they were going to dig ground in 22. They still haven't dug ground. So that will be a game changer. We need a few more of those big ones to capture the really big groups.
I also forgot to point out, we thank the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau. I know Dean Cheng serves on their advisory board, but they're a strong partner. And I want to give a special shout out to David Whitaker and Rolando Aedo. A lot of the data that our statisticians here, Mel and Michael, have been using is a study that the GMCBB did on our Wine and Food Festival. Other questions? Any final questions? Final thoughts from our panel? No?
I have one thing. If you're starting your career, come down to Miami. There is no better place to start a career. You can experience one part of your career, and if you want to change, there's real opportunity for it. It's just the best place to be to start. You can go other places later if you want, but I doubt you will once you come down there.
Michelle, Isabella, any final thoughts?
Thank you. No, thank you for having me, and keep doing amazing, amazing work.
Isabella?
Yes, thank you. I mean, Miami has some great events, and without all the events and festivals that we do, students like us wouldn't be able to get that experience and be able to participate, whether it's Super Bowl, Art Basel, the South Beach Wine and Food Festival. All of those is very important to us.
How many students are on this pod this week?
I think it's 12 of us in total.
12.
Yes.
And the students, as well as our guests, are soon seeing how this center itself is a hospitality operation. I do want to give a shout out to a native Miami Beach resident, by the way, originally, Michelle Castro. And our student programs, which Isabella and these 12 students are 12 out of about 500-600 students that visit a year for these career seminars, but it wouldn't have happened without the support of our key colleges and schools. And we see this as a pipeline for students to be exposed to a lot of these key issues we've been discussing, but visit these employers and internship providers. So we're excited to have you all here today. Dean, any final thoughts?
Thank you, Carlos, for having us here and also for representing us in DC. It's very important to have that Miami flavor here.
Okay. And speaking of Miami flavor, I think we are ready to have a little pachanga. I did one of the stops along the way for the student cohort will be at Colada Shop, a local. I think they're up to about 4 or 5 locations now, Dean. But as they like to promote their food and their cafecito, it's very Miami sweet. But we have some treats and refreshments. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you all for tuning in online. Thank you.
I'm going to leave this with you. Thank you. Carlos, I'm leaving.